Hey folks, thanks for checking into the Neutral Zone Hotel. We're an unapologetically left-leaning podcast that explores hockey at its best and worst. It says here my name's SJ, which means I haven't updated the document from last night. My name's actually Benjamin. My pronouns are he, him. And I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan living in the beautiful city of Ottawa. Yeah, welcome aboard. Today I'm hanging out with Trevor. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. It's Trevor. Pronouns are he, him, the hometown Vancouver Canucks fan. And it is just the two of us. It's almost going to be like reliving Hockey Week in Canada from a few months ago.
Yeah, something like that. But we're going to start by talking, I think, about the NHL playoffs. And you must be pretty happy. The Vancouver Canucks are up 2-1 on the Edmonton Oilers.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty easy to say that the Canucks have played a really good, strong game from their point of view, and definitely Edmonton has had some significant struggles.
Mm-hmm. Vancouver. I think the best way to put it is Vancouver's playing a pretty solid team game. Edmonton, after game one, decided to try and load up their top line by putting McDavid and Draisaitl together. Speculation was that Draisaitl was hurt and you wanted to kind of cover for that. But it also then led to them just being overworked almost. And like, don't get me wrong, they've been successful because if you look at that top five of Hyman, Draisaitl, McDavid with Bouchard and Ekholm, they have almost every single goal for Edmonton this series, which is great because you want your top stars performing. But it's not great because then you don't have your depth. And we're recording this just the day of game 4 before game 4, and they are separating them, which is probably going to be good because you can't keep playing them the way you are. Because in game 3 alone, Benjamin, I don't know if you saw, do you know how long both those guys played?
I didn't see the numbers, no.
Draisaitl 29:04 and McDavid 29:42. This isn't an overtime game either. That's a game that ended in regulation. So if you want your team to have success, or at least prolong this and go over on a deep run, you have to cut that off at some point. You can't keep running those guys out every second shift.
I think putting Draisaitl and McDavid out to center their own lines is likely how you want to win the series if you're Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
Putting them on the same line, which you can do in an emergency anyway, mid-game or for a power play, but making them run the same line constantly is basically saying we want Vancouver to put their best players out against us. Our best players are better than your best players, Quinn Hughes and Evan Bouchard slightly accepting, and then trusting that we will outscore you best on best, and the depth will not given as much, and that's certainly not what we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
So Brock Besser has lit the lamp quite a lot. Stuart Skinner has been atrocious.
Best way to put it.
Let in a couple softies, got beat honest a few times.
Mm-hmm.
To the point that Calvin Pickard's going to be starting tonight, which is not something I would personally consider to be.
No, 100% not.
Yeah, if someone told me my playoff team was starting Calvin Pickard in a game 4 of the second round, I would be pretty disappointed.
Or you'd be wondering what kind of injuries they had, but maybe that's just me being a Vancouver fan. Maybe I'm just too scarred by it at this point.
I'd still be disappointed by the injuries.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The other big piece is pretty much all of Vancouver's offense has occurred against the undynamic defensive duo of Nurse and C. Cody Ceci has long had a bad reputation as an anchor on defense, and Darnell Nurse has never lived up to his contract.
Mm-hmm.
If you go by the athletic player cards, which, you take them or leave them, but for a rough and tumble comparison, they put Darnell Nurse at roughly a $6.3 million defenseman, somebody who is a second pairing guy with top pair 2D upside, not a number 1D like he's being paid. And Cody Ceci is a third pairing D who they're playing on their second pair. Both of them like to pinch. Both of them like to get in and take the shot. And as a result, we've seen multiple situations where there are off odd man rushes from the Canucks. Generally, when the Brock Besser line is out there, it's Miller and Besser plays together, right?
Yep, Miller, Besser, Suter is usually the trio that goes out there.
Yeah, so that's when the Pettersson line is not on the ice. So you have Besser and Miller who are going to outrun and outpass and outplay Nurse and Cece. So they've gotten caught constantly, and it sounds like they're finally breaking that pairing up, which needs to happen. So I want to congratulate Chris Knobloch for doing something. You can keep doing the same thing over and over again, but it does eventually get you fired, as Sheldon Keefe can now attest.
Finally, we've only been speculating about that for a couple weeks. The other thing was
he fired since the last time we recorded?
Yeah, I think he got fired on I think he got fired on the day our episode came out last week.
Yeah, we'll talk about it. We'll touch on it briefly, but LOL.
Yeah, there is one other thing. Edmonton also made a couple moves for some depth defensemen at the deadline, and I'm surprised they haven't tried to plug either of them in yet. From the reports that we saw going out, they might be running 11-7 by having Evan Broberg in as a 7th D, but they also picked up Sam Carrick in that trade. Maybe you don't throw him in, but they also picked up Troy Stetcher, whom I saw a fair amount of in his time in Vancouver, and he's a reliable defenseman. He's small, which maybe some people don't like, but he's reliable. He's steady.
I think they brought in each of those guys with a specific replacement in mind. So obviously Henrique, they wanted to prop up the bottom six. He's hurt. Carrick is a guy you play as a 7D that can take, bottom pairing minutes. I don't think he's an improvement over Darnay, who is the guy they probably would think to replace Carrick with. Same with Stetcher. Stetcher is there to replace Brett Kulak if Kulak is hurt or Kulak has to move up to the next pairing. So sounds like they might go with Philip Broberg, who is a young guy and has a lot of upside. He's played quite well in the AHL and is hungry for a opportunity at the NHL level. And realistically, he's a guy they need to figure out what they're doing. They should be talking about clearing out some of the dead wood on defense, Cody Cece, and bringing in a guy like Broberg to play full time. But Ken Holland prunes dead wood at an exceedingly slow pace, which is probably something that this team can no longer afford.
Which is also then a good thing that himself being some old wood is probably going to get trimmed in this off season. So
yeah, I think there's a really good chance he's done. I think that it was very surprising when they didn't fire him the same time they fired Jay Woodcroft. And I think it's really surprising that he actually became active partway through the season and making a few of those depth trades we just talked about. But he's at the end of his contract. He's in his late 60s. He's already a Hockey Hall of Famer. Ken Holland has nothing left to prove. And the Edmonton Oilers already lost out on their intended Holland replacement of Steve Staios by letting Holland stick around. If they had cashiered Holland last year and promoted Staios, then Staios would have taken the Ottawa job. So, yeah, I do think that the Edmonton front office is quite slow to respond in a lot of these situations, and Knobloch seems to. His name's fucking Knobloch, man. Come on.
Okay, dude. Have you ever gone back at the last 4 or 5 Edmonton coaches and just laughed at how bad it? So before Knobloch, you got Woodcroft.
Yeah, Woodcroft.
Before that, you've got Tippett, and before that, you got Hitchcock.
Oh my god.
We're a bunch of children today. What can we say?
Oh, that's great.
I know, it's great, isn't it?
That's great. Anyway, Knobloch, he's at least doing something, and I think Woodcroft probably would be doing something, but they've had their share of coaches who, do the old Sheldon Keefe hold the line thing and just keep doing the same thing over and over again. So we'll see. We'll see if it works. If it does work, that moves the ball over to the coach of the Vancouver Canucks, who is
Rick Tocchet.
Rick Tocchet. Yep. A fun fact: I often get him confused with Ray Ferraro in my head. There's no reason for it. It's just that I will often say one when I mean the other.
Fair enough.
So, so moves the ball over to Tocchet's court, and as good as Tocchet has been this year at maximizing his star players, the only thing that he has left that he can really do is to see if he can get Pettersson going. Mm-hmm. Pettersson has not had a playoffs as dominant as I think you would want if you're a fan of the Vancouver Canucks. So if he can find a way to get him going, get him into the plays a little bit more, and get him scoring, that's probably the last thing he can do.
Yeah.
But I do not foresee a situation where Tocchet, he just doesn't have the same tools. No one has the same tools to play with.
I have had a couple chats with Canucks fans. What a shocker, considering where I live, about like what we would want to see, and especially after there were words coming out that Höglander was going to get scratched for Game 3, and so having some moves come into play. And what I was telling people is what I would want to see is to have Phil DiGiuseppe scratched, which kind of came true. He's apparently on leave from the team for personal matters, and they haven't really branched out into that. But what I wanted then is to have Mikheyev drop down to that fourth line with Lafferty and Bluger, because Mikheyev can't shoot to save his life. If he has the puck on his stick, it's going straight to the crest every time, without fail. All Stonehands is like one goal in his last like 60 games or something like that. But he's fast and he's pretty good defensively, so you can stick him on that fourth line, and then maybe you call up Podkolzin to go to that third line, crash around a bit, do some forechecking, try and free some pucks up.
Nah, I think that if you get Leon to fire that second line, I think that you need more than that to really counter it.
Sure, but that's what Joshua, Garland, and Lindholm is for.
Okay.
Is it great against Draisaitl? Maybe not. Like, Draisaitl is easily better than all three of those. No question about it. But they're going to be pesky and they're going to play defensive. So,
which is fine, but the real question for me is, can Draisaitl drive a line that is vastly underpowered compared to the top line? Because at the end of the day, they're not putting Evander Kane out there. He's not scoring the way he's expected to score. It was Corey Perry, okay. Yeah, like, their top six is a lot weaker than it's supposed to be based on what they're paying. But Draisaitl is one of the best players in the world. So if Draisaitl gets them going, gets them scoring at anything close to a second line clip, and McDavid, Hyman, and the Nuge keep that top line firing, which they'll almost certainly do, it's going to be tough for Vancouver to keep up. Now, the other side of that is we're in small sample size season, so it doesn't take much to win on the edges. But Edmonton has more talent, especially on forward, than the Canucks. They have more talent than pretty much any team in the league. Like, let's just be clear. And if Knobloch is able to get them going the way they should be, they can outscore their issues, especially with Silovs has looked great, but he's no Thatcher Demko, at least not this point.
He's looked great, but he's also looked shaky. Like, that game one was highway robbery. Let's be completely honest here.
And on the other end of it, be it Pickard or Skinner, if someone starts getting 900 goaltending, not even 905, 900 goaltending, that's it. If Skinner was saving, .900, this series would be 3-0 Edmonton. And, that's obviously, ifs and buts. But at the same time, if you are Vancouver, all these games have been on the edge of a knife. Mm-hmm. Both teams have blown big leads. Both teams have fought hard. So it's a hell of a series so far. And I mean, I'm excited to see. I thought Edmonton was going to run them over, and they haven't. Part of that is Stuart Skinner, and part of that is, the Canucks are doing a really good job.
But yeah, Vancouver arguably has better depth than Edmonton is. Like, you can roll your four lines at Vancouver a lot better than you can in Edmonton, where it's top heavy. Like, the top of Edmonton's top is amazing, but then you're hoping those just bottom two can just hold on for dear life.
Yeah, and if you're playing in Edmonton, Edmonton gets the last change, you don't have that luxury, and that's the big thing here. So if Edmonton wins tonight, the series is even, then they just have to steal one in Vancouver. So we'll see.
Yeah, and hey, Vancouver's not been great at home in these playoffs.
No, we'll see. It's like I said, it's a hell of a series. I was definitely wrong with my prediction, but I hammered my first round prediction, so
nice.
I'm glad to be wrong. Yeah, I was like, I picked every round.
I went 6 of 8. Unfortunately,
no.
I had too much hope in Canadian teams.
No, I even called Leafs coming back from
3-1. We have it on this podcast. We have it on recording and everything.
I didn't make a call on the Stars night series, but I did call it was going to go to 7. So I'll take that. So yeah, no, I was pretty happy.
Yeah, for sure.
Florida and Boston.
Ooh, that one looked like it was going to be a lot different based off of game 1, but afterwards it's just been nothing but Florida. And we should mention, I'll mention we are recording. Oh, hey, as we record, Boston just scored to make it 2-1.
Yeah.
So they're not giving up just yet, but oh man, it looked hairy there for a while.
I think the big story about this series is going to be obviously the growing amount of bad blood between the Bruins and the Panthers, and what really looks like the birth of a new, really nasty rivalry. We saw multiple line brawls. We saw Pasternak fighting Nichushkin.
Oh, God.
That's a $20 million fight. That's crazy.
Dude, did you see, like, if Pasternak connected with that one haymaker, holy shit. Oop,
yeah.
Put one on the swear jar for that. There's our explicit tag.
It was a lot of big swings, and like they were not fighting just so they could say they had a fight. They were throwing down. And Pasternak's been really chippy the whole series. Like he's hit hard. He's been, done a lot behind the play. He's taken some dumb penalties by going after guys after whistles. So he is definitely feeling the hatred of Florida and particularly Matt Nichushkin, but such is the way of things. How do you feel about the Sam Bennett hit?
Oh, what hit? Like,
punch.
No, yeah, exactly. I am surprised that didn't get anything. Like, not even a fine is absurd to me.
It sounds like
don't get me wrong.
Like TNT didn't make the angle that shows the punch available,
which is
until
wild.
After. Yeah,
you got to imagine the league's got to be pissed about that, right?
Maybe tough to say what the league gets pissed off about, but it was certainly something because I saw the one hit and I thought to myself, maybe he did pock, Brad Marchand right in the kisser. But maybe that's just his head snapping back from getting a really strong but clean and legal hit. Impossible to tell from the angle. And then they show the other one where he is clearly punching the man right in the chin. And all I could think of was, why did I have to wait a day to see this?
Yeah, 100%.
It was absolutely... Sucker punch is probably too strong a term because... in a sucker punch, you are not expecting any physical contact. It comes truly out of the blue. You can't say Brad Marchand wasn't expecting to get his, body impacted. He certainly wasn't expecting a glove to the face. So, but it's like definitely an illegal hit. And, you could probably go so far as to say intent to injure. So yeah, public enemy number one on a team that has Matt Nichushkin is not Matt Nichushkin. Congratulations, Sam Bennett.
Cousins, no less.
Yeah.
And it should also be said, you mucked up when a Canadiens fan and a Canucks fan are defending Brad Marchand in this situation.
I never defended Brad Marchand. I just said he got punched in the head.
Fair point. Well, just saying, like, Bennett's completely, like, obviously in the wrong, but like you almost feel for Marchand. The only reason you don't is because it's him.
No, the only reason I don't feel a damn thing for Marchand, I just feel grateful that he's not in the game, but not in a way where I think it's right to excuse a very clear stiff punch to the face. And he isn't. He's missed 2 games so far with what's leaked out as concussion protocol, and understandable. Like, there's no way his brain wasn't bouncing around the skull after that one. It was rough.
I also heard a couple other people talking about it, not necessarily like reports and whatnot, but listening to a couple other podcasts, and people were speculating that he might have gotten KO'd from that hit, like blacked out.
I don't think they have to worry about it. It doesn't matter where the rat ends up. He always knows how to make his way back into the maze. So don't worry, Boston. I'm sure we'll see Brad Marchand back and healthy very soon. Just probably not in the 3rd round.
We can only hope.
Yeah. Carolina won't die. So they were down 3-0 and they fought back. They're now 3-2 with some really late game heroics, and that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, and even those 3 games that New York's won, Carolina's made it interesting. They've made it close. There was at least the one overtime game. That first game too, like Carolina they potted one with their net empty, and then got real close to tying it. That's been a low key fun series. If anything, also memeable thanks to Jacob Trouba consistently finding ways to go flying through the air with an arm sticking out.
I'll thank you to call him Mark Messier Leadership Award recipient, Jacob Trouba. As I said on our Discord, which you can join us at neutralzonehotel.com/Discord. We'd love to hang out with you. But yeah, the joke I made there is the only thing that he leads this league in is undisciplined elbowing concussions over 60. I fucking hate Jacob Trouba.
Yeah, he's a piece. It was also funny too in another Discord wherein someone posted the news story about how he has those art pieces where he kind of jumps on a trampoline and throws his body up against them. So I joked saying I can't wait to see his new style of art based off of his newfound penchants by going head first.
Just a smushed face on the canvas.
Yeah, 100%.
When he did that, the only thing I could think of was at Bash in the Beach 96, which is the Bash in the Beach where Hulk Hogan turns heel. For those of you who don't know, it's a very important wrestling event. But Kevin Nash just lawn darts Rey Mysterio into the side of a trailer, and it looked exactly like that, except not done by a trained stunt person. Just Jacob Trouba just jumping. It was Nikos, I think he dodged it, and both feet in the air, face first into the glass. One of the funniest things I've ever seen. And
I saw a lot of comparisons to Wile Coyote going after the Roadrunner.
Oh, man, it's so true.
The funny thing too is the very next game he tried another one and missed completely. The one with Kuznetsov. It wasn't quite airborne, but he's still off his feet, and he's got that chicken wing going. So,
the chicken wing is part of the Jacob Trouba experience.
Oh, 100%.
And if you are a star player, he is trying to put the point of his elbow through your fucking cranium. So
he's going to try and feed you some wings, whether you like it or not. Maybe that's why Mark Messier likes him so much.
Mark Messier likes him so much because he also loved putting his elbow inside people's brain pans.
And also because he's a New York Ranger, but
and also because he's the captain of the New York Rangers.
Yeah,
which Mark Messier, the greatest captain of all time. I know. In Vancouver, you all know and believe that in your very cores. So,
yeah. Honestly, you can tell all the riot jokes. You can tell literally anything. Canucks fans can potentially shake it off, be like, "Yeah, we've heard all before." As soon as you mention Mark Messier, that is the number one guaranteed way to set somebody off here.
Look, buddy, greatest captain of all time. They named the award after him. They let him pick I can't believe they just let him pick who the winner is.
Not gonna lie, I didn't actually know that that's how it was.
Yeah, that's
selected.
That's the selection.
That's wild.
It's one of the most boneheaded things the NHL does on a regular basis. Obviously, the NHL does all sorts of boneheaded things that are way worse than letting Mark Messier pick an award. But knowing that every year, It's probably Bill Daly has to call Mark Messier and be like, "Hey, Mark, who do you like for the Leadership Award this year?" And Mark Messier's like, Jacob Trouba, I guess."
He gave me a bag of Lays.
And then that's it. That's the selection.
Oh yeah.
And now he gets an award that is a real NHL award that they celebrate and put on the award show, and they all have to pretend it's a big deal. Do you know who the other winners of the Mark Messier Leadership Award are? And I'm not including like when they started it. So when they started it, they did like a monthly thing. So I'm not including that. I'm just talking about yearly winners going all the way back to 2006, 2007.
Oh man, that far back, huh? All right. Sid the Kid's got one.
He does indeed. Sidney Crosby won the 09-10.
Okay. Shea Weber's on there, isn't he?
15-16, which I think was his last year with the Predators.
Zdeno Chara.
Big Z won the same year he won the Cup.
Ugh. Wayne Simmons, if I remember correctly, is on there.
Yep. That's the year he got traded to Nashville.
Does Stamkos have one?
He does. He got last year's.
Iginla?
Yeah, he had an early one.
Yeah. Oh man. All right, we're doing better.
So some other options here. Nick Foligno.
Sure.
Okay. Shane Doan. Sure.
Yeah.
And Derek Engeland
is
the real.
Was that for 17-18?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. The first Vegas year.
I'm not gonna sit here and dump on Derek Engeland, who was a perfectly good NHL player for a long time, and certainly they liked him a lot in Las Vegas. But one of those things, man, is not like the other. So it's just whoever Mark Messier is thinking about when Bill Daly calls, I think is legitimately how they pick this award.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Also, got to say, to go back a bit, your impression of him was almost giving him a little too much personality.
I wasn't really doing an impression, man. I was just...
Fair point. All right.
Yeah. I don't think I could do a Messier impression.
But...
there's got to be something there to work from. So, yeah, do you think Carolina's going to be able to pull it off? Do you think they're going to be able to come back?
I think they can force a Game 7. We'll see if Freddie Anderson can stop being Freddie Anderson long enough to at least get them to that. But the team has enough talent, especially with their trade deadline acquisitions. Gensel's look fantastic, and Kuznetsov looks like he's found new life. For a guy who we thought was cooked, he looks he looks not quite Caps Cup run level, but he looks a lot better and rejuvenated.
They're playing him as a second line center, aren't they?
Yeah, which is probably perfect because you get that extra depth, and then Gensel on that top line with Aho and Svechnikov.
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah, I definitely think they're going to force a Game 7. The Rangers just let them run roughshod on them in the last game, which is very funny to me. The Rangers, not my favorite hockey team.
No, they're far. Yeah, the team that employs famously, what was it? Not quite Trader, but the Barbarian, Chris Kreider.
Yeah, the war criminal.
That's the one.
There's like 4 guys in this league I truly dislike as hockey players, and Chris Kreider and Jacob Trouba are 2 of them. So it's very easy for me to say that the Rangers are my least favorite team.
Yep.
Even though they've got a couple guys I think are awesome, like Mika Zibanejad, he's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Great hockey player, great flow. And realistically, I'm a Montreal Canadiens fan. Nothing makes me happier than seeing a guy's flow when he's skating down the ice going to score a goal. Brings back memories of Guy Lafleur. Not that I have memories of Guy Lafleur. I'm not that old. But you know what I mean.
But yeah, it's the history. It's the mystique behind it.
That's right.
And also, we can't help and like Panarin. All support to those who are Russian who oppose Putin.
Yeah. I don't want to get into that right now because
that's for another time.
It's not like he. Anyway, yeah, it's opposing Putin is a good thing to do. That's what we'll say.
Yeah, but at the same time, no. The
Well,
only way I would be fine with the Rangers advancing, and I mean the only way. This is gonna be fantasy dreamland for Trevor here. if the Canucks can somehow go to the Western Conference Final, let's say they win that. If it's Boston versus New York in the Eastern Conference Final, it means no matter what, I get a rematch of a Cup final, and that's fun for me. This is magical Christmas land, though. It's never going to happen.
I just don't want good things for the Rangers. So,
agreed.
I do think they're likely to close this series out in 7, though. A comeback from 3-0 is special. We might very well see one, but it's pretty rare.
Mm-hmm. I think there's only been 4 or 5 in NHL history, so, or at least successful ones. There's been a handful more, obviously, that go to Game 7.
Getting to Game 7 is one thing, but yeah, returns from down 3-0. There's the Leafs did it way back in the day. There was
the Sharks beat the Kings in, was it 5th?
No, or the was other it the way around.
Yeah, Kings beat the Sharks, and that was was that the 14 Cup run?
I think that's the 14 Cup run. I'd have to look it up.
No worries.
It's one of the Cup runs.
And then Philadelphia did it to Boston.
Other way, is that 2010?
I think so, yeah, because Philly was also down 3-0 in Game 7 to come back to win it 4-3 in a perfect mirror of how the series went. But
if you say so,
I'm like 99% sure on this one.
Yep. That was one.
Swish.
Yeah, because I know the next year they met again in the playoffs, and it went the other way, and Boston went on. They beat some other no account teams on the way too.
But those are the only 3 I can think of. I think there might be one more, but yeah, it's stupidly rare to see a reverse sweep happen.
Reverse sweep. Let me look it up. A list of teams to overcome 3-0 series deficits. So it was, it's only happened 4 times in NHL history.
Sweet.
So, and then 5 teams have evened a series after being down 3-0 to lose Game 7.
Yeah, I remember one of those very vividly. Chicago, Vancouver, 2011, round 1.
Yeah, funny how you remember that one. Do you remember that Detroit and San Jose had the same thing happen to them the same year?
No, I did not know that. Oh, wow.
Yep.
I should remember that, because those probably happened, obviously, like right beside each other, not on the same day. But no,
it was in the semis instead of the quarters. So.
Okay, yeah, and then because San Jose. Yeah, I should have remembered that too, because obviously the winner of that, I think, went on to play Vancouver in that conference final.
That is how the playoffs work. Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, maybe we're due. Maybe with parity and the cap, maybe we're going to get more of these than we got beforehand. Mm-hmm. We've had 2 since 2004, so in 2 and 20 years, and in the long history of the NHL before that, going back to when there were 7-game series, which I think starts in the 30s, maybe even the 20s. I'd have to look it up. I'm not Sean McIndoe. I don't have this shit memorized. But yeah, from basically for roughly 80 years, it only happened twice. So we're already kind of ahead of schedule. If we see another one, it might just mean that is more likely now, which is pretty cool. And especially if you bundle in the failed reverse sweeps, then it's 4 opportunities to do that in the last little bit. So.
And especially considering, like, it's never happened. You've never seen a reverse sweep in the NBA, and it's only, I think, been 1 reverse sweep in MLB history, at least in a best of 7. Like, the NHL already having this many, and even this many in a short period of time, we're already in a lucky territory as hockey fans getting to see this kind of thing compared to other sports.
Yeah, and even if you go look at other leagues, I'm just looking at the Wikipedia article right now, list of teams to overcome 3-0 series deficits. If you go and look at it, basically it's only hockey this happens in. Mm-hmm. So there's one from Japanese baseball, Mexican baseball, then it's like Western Hockey League, Finnish, the Liga, the NL in Switzerland, the Slovak top league, the Liga, Finland, ECHL, Western Hockey League, Continental Hockey League, Ontario Hockey League, So yeah, it's like the vast majority of these are in hockey, which I think is one of the reasons why hockey is the best sport in the world, because, you're never truly out of it unless you are the Toronto Maple Leafs. At which point, sorry, Leafs fans, sorry.
Are you though?
Sorry. I'm a little sorry.
Fair enough.
So Colorado, let's talk about them. Let's finish this conversation off. So yeah, Colorado, they they beat the piss out of the Jets, and they're down 2-1. And the last game they looked bad. Mm-hmm. They were missing Devon Taves and Valeri Nichushkin. Taves appears to be injured, and Nichushkin Nichushkin has been suspended for 6 months minimum due to a third stage violation of the NHL player assistance policy. He's been put back into the player assistance program, and very similar to last year against Seattle, where he disappeared and entered the program. And you could tell it was impacting the Avalanche last night. Mm-hmm. They were listless out there.
That was actually one of the very rare games I pretty much completely missed. I did check in here and there, and I think the summary of how the game went was the shot clock at the end of the first period was 18-2. And Dallas just rode that all the way to the end. Just a commanding, perfect road game from Dallas. But yeah, Colorado was just lifeless.
Nichushkin has been the best player for the Avalanche in the playoffs with 9 goals and an assist in 8 games. So from an on-ice perspective, losing him is definitely a challenge, but it is very evident, especially with some of the comments from Jack Johnson. It's very evident that this is hitting the locker room quite hard. So he said today, when was asked about it, he made his decisions. That's all I'm going to say on that. He made his decisions, that's cold. Johnson, his personal history, his parents treated him quite poorly. He spent a lot of his money and a lot of addiction problems there. But when Sam Girard entered the program earlier this year, he was absolutely supportive. Yeah. So it does sound like, maybe it's repeating. This happened last year, this happened this year. Maybe it's happening at the worst time. Maybe there was other stuff there, but it does sound like the Nichushkin era in Colorado is going to be over one way or another.
I was going to say, didn't Nichushkin also re-enter the player program earlier this year, or am I getting him mixed up with Girard?
Oh, I don't know. You might be getting him mixed up with Girard.
I feel like I might be. Avs fans, if you're around, come hop in our Discord. Come let me know if I'm right or if I'm wrong here. But yeah,
he played 72 games this year. He did enter the player assistance program in January 2024, and then returned on March 8th.
Okay. So this is definitely not his first foray with them, obviously, this year then. So, I feel like, the very little that Jack Johnson says a lot, and that, as yet he made his choices. He obviously knew, and obviously the players knew, but Nichushkin knew what he had to do. And I'm not going to fault anyone for their addictions. They're disease for a reason. It's unfortunate, but I think the guys are the teammates at this point are just well, you know what? He's made his bed. He can now lie in it, because it's been 3 times now in the last 2 years, starting from Seattle with that incident, going back into the assistance program in January, and now this.
I think it's important to note we don't know, other than it's been reported that he failed a drug test. We don't know any more than that. We don't know, what drug it was. We don't know what the circumstances there are. We don't know if this is somebody who is suffering from addiction, or somebody who has just made bad personal decisions, because it is possible to just be dumb and do something at the wrong time and get caught and put your team in a bind. that's, not necessarily serious addiction. Bad judgment and addiction are not the same thing. It is possible that he is addicted to, obviously, I don't want to get too much into the possibilities from a perspective. If he is suffering from addiction, I really hope he gets the help he needs. But the other thing is, addiction and drug use, should drugs be illegal? No, but this is it is what it is. And when it impacts the team, they have a right to their feelings. So I think for Jack Johnson, probably speaking for a lot of guys on the team, they're probably pretty angry to be put in this position. Again, something's happened, second year in a row in the playoffs. A guy who's been really good for them, been a part of their team, is no longer available, and they're probably looking at it like it was something he chose to do. And again, could be addiction, could be other stuff. We don't know. The other thing is the structure. We're finding out a lot more about the structure of the way the player assistance program works. Because at this point, he's suspended without pay for 6 months. The next time it's a year, contract termination possibility. So it's very punitive, which is probably one of the worst ways to handle someone who does have a dependency on a drug or alcohol. And that really rubs me the wrong way. It starts off very supportive. Everyone says, great, go into the program, get better. And realistically, we know what that means. We know it means go to rehab. But now, for whatever reason, it hasn't worked. And there's lots of reasons why rehab doesn't work the first time or the 10th time. And the NHL is now taking away his livelihood and forcing him into the program. Tough line to walk, obviously, but it does not feel like it's the best way to make sure that Valeri Nichushkin gets the help he needs.
And I feel like it's also unfortunate that that's now just kind of overshadowing what's been a pretty good series. But when you got something like as serious as this coming up, it's pertinent to talk about. And I mean, yeah, we just hope the best for him because he's had a very interesting career. He was a first round pick, and I think early on by Dallas, didn't really stick with the team, went over to Russia for several years and then made a comeback seemingly out of nowhere. And then just it clicked for him randomly. Well, maybe not randomly, but for the rest of us, it seemed randomly with Colorado a few years back. And it's been what's seemingly great until, that mysterious happening in Seattle, where also we just heard about a call to the authorities, a woman passed out in his room, and
probably shouldn't get too much into it. We don't have any real details.
Yeah. All I'm saying is like it's been a wild ride for this guy, and it's fascinating in a way.
Yeah. And, at the end of the day, if he needs help, I hope he gets the help he needs and is able to come back and play hockey at the top level. And if it's one or the other, I hope it's the former, because that's all you can do is hope that people get the help they need. A lot of people out there who are suffering with addiction and suffering with family members with addiction who are addicted. So we'll leave some resources in the show notes in case that's you. And you do feel like you need to reach out and ask for help. There are lots of resources out there. So we'll add one for Canada and one for the United States. But yeah, hopefully he gets well soon. And yeah, he's definitely not coming back to help the Avalanche. So they're going to have to figure something out. Yeah. And that brings us to the end of the roundup on the NHL playoffs. So we're going to take a quick break just as a reminder beforehand. Check us out on YouTube. You can check us out on Instagram or Blue Sky. It's all at Neutral Zone Hotel. Like I said earlier, we would love if you joined our Discord, neutralzonehotel.com/Discord, because we really love talking about hockey. We love talking about hockey so much that we do it into this microphone once a week, but also just like all the time with our fingers on the keyboards. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, please pop us 5 stars because it helps the show out. All right. We'll be right back. Hey, thanks. We're back. So we're going to talk about the PWHL a little bit, and the first round is well underway. Both teams are, well, there'll be 3 games in by the time this drops. I think the 4th game will go sometime on Wednesday. Toronto is up 2. Minnesota won their most recent game to make it a 2-1 series, and they're in Minnesota for one more. And right now, Montreal is somewhat surprisingly in a 2-0 hole to the Boston team. I don't know why I almost called them the Bruins. It's just a
force of habit.
Force of habit.
It also doesn't help that the Bruins are playing right now, so it's so easy to equate it.
Yeah, but. So they're down to the Boston team right now, although currently they are in game 3 Montreal is winning 2-0. And yeah, this Montreal series has been wild. The overtimes have been. So yeah, we went to overtime, then we went immediately into triple overtime in game 2. Obviously the longest game in PWHL history. Aaron Ambrose played 60 minutes to set a league record that will almost certainly not be matched for a while.
Mm-hmm. Like what they were saying, like that if you compare it to the NHL, that'd be like the 5th longest amount of ice time by an NHL player. And like looking at those names at the top, like I think Seth Jones is number 1, and that was that 5 overtime game between Tampa Bay and Columbus a while back. So
yeah,
man, I just hope some of those ladies had some nice ice baths afterwards, because
I'm sure they were hurting.
Yeah, for sure.
Montreal really has shortened their bench in the postseason, and it hasn't worked until I haven't looked at the ice time for tonight, but it didn't work in game 1 and 2. They were not high scoring games, and they didn't get the big goals from Poulin and Stacey that they were really hoping for. So why do you think the benches are so short in the PWHL, Trevor?
I feel like I'm the wrong person to ask, because I think out of the entire crew, I'm like number 4, maybe number 3 for playing.
Don't equivocate. Like, just talk about what you know about hockey.
Just, you know who your stars are, and you try and rely on your stars, but you also don't want to be the one to be burned. You're playing not to win, you're playing to not lose. And so lose the best, you put your best players out.
I don't know that it's a desperation thing, because they were doing it in game 1 as well. I could see it if you're down 2-0 and you really need to get the win, you shorten the bench, especially in the 3rd. But they've been playing with a really short bench, and it's been like that all year. A lot of clubs have played with really short benches. And I think it speaks to a disparity in talent levels that still exists. And I think it speaks to how good the stars are. The PHF and the CWHL were, as predecessors of the current league, they were not containing the full body. And the PWHL still doesn't contain the full body of available top and female players. Some of them are coming from Europe. There are some to come in from the NCAA. But it's much closer to being complete. And I think what we are seeing is a real talent disparity. And this, I think, is going to be reflected at the end of the year. I think that most teams in the PWHL are going to be turning over a lot of their bottom 6.
Mm-hmm.
Because with new people coming in through drafts, free agents available, European players, I think there's more out there. I just don't think this league is maxed out talent. If this league was 12 teams, a lot of these players in the bottom 6 would be perfectly safe. Yeah. But, one of the reasons I feel that Ottawa made some bold moves with kind of their bottom of the lineup players is they knew they weren't bringing those players back. Or they highly expected to replace them in the draft.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, man. Like, Boston didn't shorten the bench as much. Maybe they trust their bottom six a little bit more, but they still had a pretty short bench. So
yeah, like the disparity in ice time was still vast.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I don't know. It's really been interesting, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm. And I mean, again, it's also growing pains. Maybe this gets better in coming years. Maybe it's just going to be more of the same. We'll find out. But I would love to also see what it's going to look like after this game, just to see if maybe the Courtney Kessler and Corey Chevry kind of looked at game two, be like, all right, we kind of need to balance this out a little bit more. We can't be playing one of our players like 12 seconds and another one 50 some odd seconds.
Attendance was not great in Minnesota. Just over 3,000, which is the lowest attended. Yeah, lowest attended game of the season in the playoffs.
And it's not like the Minnesota Wild are doing anything. So that for a building that had 13,000 at the start of the year, that's a far drop off. And for playoffs, no less. But yeah, and then watching this broadcast, the Songus Center looks more full than it has the prior times, and that's still not saying much. Like, there's a lot of empty blue seats in that arena as well.
They've sold it out a couple times, and they've also had some pretty underwhelming games. Montreal sold out both games. Toronto sold out both games. Mm-hmm. So not surprising, but again, the strength of the league continues to be in Canada. A couple other PWHL pieces that we should talk on. PWHL New York and their coach, Howie Draper, quote, mutually agree on, quote, coaching change, which their GM, Pascal Dou, later called a win-win-win. You can, I don't know what he meant by that, but
they get rid of a coach that underperformed. Coach gets to go do something else that he wanted to do, and they get a fresh start, I guess. But yeah, that's a bit of an indictment.
Stories out of the team talk about a coach who did not take charge and lead and allowed the tenured players, the players with term, to dictate line mates and matchups on the ice. It does not sound like it was really a great experience. Howie Draper came from the lauded, University of Alberta. Yeah, the lauded University of Alberta program where he was 26 years, the winningest coach in U Sports women's hockey history, where he is going back after his 1-year stint as the inaugural coach of PWHL New York. And obviously that team is going to have the same level of roster turnover we just talked about. Mm-hmm. But boy, oh boy, do they need a new head coach.
One who might actually coach by the sounds of things.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if they talk about promoting Colton Orr, who's an assistant right now with them and has been involved in coaching women's hockey since the end of his career.
Yeah, I remember him being in the NWHL and the PHF as a head coach, so that feels like it would be a good pick.
Yeah, it's possible they were only really intending to bring in Howie Draper for the 1 year. We do not know, but we do know he is gone and what has been described as a win-win. So yeah, they're going to have an opportunity to name a new head coach. So the first head coach firing in PWHL history, another historic first for the PWHL. Dun 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 dun.
Historic. And yet still not even the first coaching change period. As we remember, Minnesota famously let theirs go before the season started.
Well, I believe he retired.
Something like that.
Something like that. Yeah, not the first coaching change. The first coaching, again, it's mutual, but no, it's a dismissal. Speaking of changes, the PWHL has also announced that Bauer will become the hockey equipment and apparel brand. So they will be doing the first official jerseys, presumably with the branding that's about to show up. Trevor, you're the jersey expert here. How are you feeling about Bauer with this contract?
Dude, it's not something named Fanatics. Through the roof. This is awesome news. And especially for an established brand like Bauer, who's got a lot of connection to hockey. Like, you can go back through the ages. You can see a lot of Bauer popping up around like the 90s, the 2000s. Just, again, like I said, the fact that it's not Fanatics, I think is a huge win because Fanatics was everywhere. Like, the CFL has them. The NHL is obviously going to them. The MLB's got them. And usually, presumably, because they will do it for what the leagues deem a good price. Like the leagues get a lot of money out of it. Bauer, if I remember correctly, used to do at least like fan replica jerseys for the NHL way back in the day. But it's just nice to see an established brand like that working with the PWHL instead of what we've all at this point equated to mediocre at best. So I'm very excited to see what they'll do. Very excited to obviously see what the team names and whatnot will be. But as soon as they, get all that up there, I would be more than willing to drop some extra money and get an official Bauer jersey.
Yeah.
And, put it beside my nice replica Ottawa jersey from year one.
We're clearly going to see some high quality products. I think that the PWHL is too small for Fanatics. I think that's all it is. And these more traditional equipment makers like Bauer and CCM are probably only going to flourish with the smaller leagues. I also wouldn't be blown away if Fanatics gets the official, like the fan replica contract eventually down the road. They already have it for Hockey Canada, where they're doing a piss poor job.
Shocker.
And that seems more their area of expertise. I get the sense that the only reason they're getting these contracts with the big leagues is nobody else wants them. So, I don't know. We'll see. No, I thought it was good news. I thought of you when I read it.
That's actually flattering. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to getting a Bauer jersey next year for the Ottawa, whatever the branding is going to be. I'm excited to have a Bauer jersey to wear. Although I'll still bust out the original Ottawa replica from time to time because it shows you were there from day one,
Mm-hmm. Well, and you renewed your season ticket, so I imagine you're probably going to find out. I'd imagine amongst the first of us what the team branding will be. Hopefully.
Yeah, I renewed, so I'm at. It was $1,200 for 3 tickets for 15 games, including parking. It went up by $2 a game, and then there are 3 more games. So yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait for next season.
And hey, having gone with you obviously to the game, that parking's real good.
Yeah, it's real. It makes your life a lot easier. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm. But and also, as you mentioned, the next games, 15 games, which I know we've speculated on before, but you don't normally see an odd number like that for games. So, the speculation of maybe they get a game elsewhere starts rolling.
Speaking of games elsewhere, Trevor, we're going to talk about Major League Hockey, a new era in ice hockey. So this league was announced by Toronto Maple Leafs superfan Steve Dangle on Twitter and YouTube. And it is a 3-on-3 league that is promising dynamic gameplay, end-to-end action, overtime thrills. They have promised a $30 million salary cap and to drop 16 teams across North America. And yeah, they are absolutely a totally real league.
100%.
Wait, no, apparently they're not. So Dangle put this out and very quickly had to retract it. Mm-hmm. And apparently there are financial interests looking to create a league, and those financial interests are strongly linked to the Saudi Public Investment Fund. Trevor, do you know anything about the Saudi Public Investment Fund and Vision 3030?
I don't. I know of the Saudis' attempts to ingratiate themselves to the world by involving themselves in sport, but I don't know the finer details of those projects that you mentioned. So I'm going to get educated real quickly here, just like I'm sure everyone else is.
So The Saudi Public Investment Fund is the sovereign wealth fund created by the Saudis with oil money for the purpose of preparing for a post-oil revenue world. Obviously, one day the oil will run out. Even if we don't stop using it, Saudi Arabia will eventually run out of oil. A lot of other popular, large, rich oil countries have done this. Qatar, Norway, they have huge sovereign wealth funds. Like the Norwegian sovereign wealth fund is the largest sovereign wealth fund in the world. It's over €1 trillion. And it legitimately has power to force companies to do things because they can divest or invest in huge areas. And the Norwegian sovereign wealth fund does things like refuses to buy stock in Raytheon because it gets used to bomb things, and they refuse to back companies that work on American nuclear weapons systems. Saudi Public Investment Fund is like the opposite of that. So, under the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, the Public Investment Fund has been pursuing a goal called Vision 3030, which is a recreation of the Saudi economy for 3030 to add in tourism, to add in different areas of economic sourcing, to draw in, professionals and that sort of thing. And there's two problems with it. Trevor, I promise if you guess what those problems are wrong, I will not cut you up with a bone saw in an embassy in Turkey.
Oh,
I should hasten to add that we're going to talk about some really brutal stuff here, so you might just want to skip to the end if that's something that'll impact you. So content warning for human rights abuses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the Saudi government is one of the more repressive major countries in the world. They are very much against LGBTQ rights. They used to execute LGBTQ people. They claim they no longer do, but many LGBTQ advocates say that members of the gay, trans, lesbian community continue to disappear in Saudi Arabia. They only recently allowed women to do things like go to sports events and drive. They continue to crack down on people who ask for better treatment of women. There's a list here, but most famously, the number one thing a lot of people think of when they think of Mohammed bin Salman and Saudi human rights successes is the murder and dismemberment of Washington Post journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who was lured into an embassy in Turkey and murdered and cut apart. Because he was, speaking quite critically about the Saudi regime, as I'm doing, but I'm never going to a Saudi embassy. Let me tell you what. The purpose of the Public Investment Fund and Vision for 2020 is to create an image of Saudi Arabia that overcomes their brutality, their wars in Yemen, their treatment of LGBTQ people, their treatment of women, their treatment of political dissidents. And they do this by buying large stakes in companies like Boeing and Disney and Bank of America. They do this by buying large stakes in, big investments in upcoming firms like Uber. They also had a lot of money in WeWork, which is very funny because WeWork just went under. They also do it by buying off American government employees, like Jared Kushner, who now is helping to manage a couple $2 billion given to his investment fund by the Saudis. But for the purposes of this conversation, they are also complicit in sports washing. Mm-hmm. So sports washing is bringing in popular sports with the goal of raising the, basically making people think, hey, Saudi Arabia, they do the golf, they're okay.
Oh, what do you mean they do all these bad things? They also do the wrestling and the golf and the other thing. They can't be that bad.
Yeah, so as part of Vision 3030, the Saudi Public Investment Fund has invested hundreds of millions of dollars into Live Golf, which was originally created as a competitor for the PGA, and now is talking about merger with the PGA, which would almost certainly put the Saudis in control of the largest golf circuit in the world. They've made a $2 billion offer to buy the tennis, the ATP and WTA, so the men's and women's tennis tours that do the majors. They had attempted to take over Newcastle United Football Club in the Premier League and basically got blocked by the Premier League. And Mohammed bin Salman personally lobbied Boris Johnson to allow it to go through, that's wild, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, they are talking about creating basketball leagues. They're talking about creating their own soccer leagues. And of course, now they are rumored to be the money behind Major League Hockey. If it happens, the only way they could get $30 million a team is from the Saudis. So Steve Dangle, I don't know what happened there. He apparently talked about it on a podcast today.
Yeah, I did listen to it, so
I can't listen to Steve talk.
That's fair.
My favorite thing, I can listen to him talk about the Leafs. I don't really care about what he has to say on anything else. But I think what this brings to me is we have to be careful, because when someone shows up and says, hey, I'm going to give your league a bunch of money, like there's a greater than zero chance, like a greater than 50% chance it's somebody from the Saudi Public Investment Fund. And they've done all sorts of dumb shit. Like, you want to look up something funny, look up NEOM or the Wall, I guess it's called. It's this absolutely insane idea where they're going to build a giant city that's literally like in a wall that stretches for miles. It relies on technologies like flying cars and stuff that haven't been invented.
Oh my God.
It's supposed to be, have its internal, mechanisms run by generative AI. It's just buzzword city.
Oh dear.
And they're building this thing in the middle of the desert.
Okay.
But all the promotional images they've put out look like they're made in Photoshop. I don't know. Like they owned huge amounts of WeWork, which went under. They own a lot of Uber. They own multiple small banks. They were deeply involved in the Credit Suisse collapse. So they're absolutely, they've got their fingers in all these pies, and they make the world dance a lot more than people think they do. So whenever you see anything where it's like a bunch of money's come into something, you should be thinking, is this the Saudis? Because if it is the Saudis, they want it so that they can make themselves look good. And they've gotten themselves, for some reason, they're going to be hosting the 2029 or 2030 Asian Winter Games in Saudi Arabia. They've been awarded the 2034 FIFA World Cup in a highly uncompetitive, probably rigged selection process that very much mirrored the selection of Qatar for the most recent one. And like, you wouldn't think that they're going to put their money into hockey, but for a fund that's almost $1 trillion, what's $500 million to buy the goodwill of a bunch of Americans and Canadians, right? It's not much.
Talking about that, what it kind of reminds me of, do you remember several episodes back when we played a game that you created for us? It was like, find the correct answer.
Yeah, I gave it a long name, which was I need to come up with a better name for this game.
That's right. And I remember talking about when Phil Esposito was first getting money together to purchase the Tampa Bay Lightning, and he allegedly got money from the Yakuza.
Yeah.
I feel like that's going to be potentially a lot more viable now if an owner or a potential owner comes along either looking to purchase a new franchise or to move a different franchise. It's like, where are you getting your money from? Places, don't look too deep in, and all of a sudden you just kind of look up, you see a couple strings popping out of his limbs, and you just potentially see the Saudi fund cheering him along.
It already looks like the NHL is thirsty for expansion. With the conditions for reactivating the Coyotes on the table, there's the possibility that Marullo shows up and activates it. And I'm not saying he's going to go out and get a bunch of Saudi money to do it. But like, if he did, you wouldn't be very surprised, would you?
Considering everything else that's come out about him, no, not a bit.
Right. Exactly. And there are like the one of the coalitions pushing for a new team in Atlanta, highly suspect, and no one's sure where they're going to get the money, but they say they're going to get it. You don't know where that could be from, the PIF. So the league is I think the NHL is going to 36 teams soon, like within the next. If we were still at 32 teams by 2030, I'll be shocked. If we're under 36 teams by 2040, I'll be shocked, Like,
yeah.
I'm guessing we're going to see expansion, the first wave of expansion in 26, 27, and then probably every 2 to 3 years after that until we're at 36 teams.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that we're going to see a bad owner like that get in during Gary Bettman's watch, because Gary Bettman got bit. So the Phil Esposito thing occurred before Bettman was brought in.
Yeah.
The financing was done before Bettman was really fully on board with the league, but he got bit by the John Spano thing. There was the thing with the Predators. So he's had bad owners, and he's, again, all credit to Gary Bettman. He's done pretty good work to make sure the people who come into the league as owners have the pockets needed to run sports franchises. Some of them more questionable than others, but Marullo, his questionableness was not in how much money he had. It was in his business practices. Melnick had tons of money when he bought the Senators. He just kind of ran out of it because he's dumb and likes the horses too much. But most of the people who own teams now are incredibly stable. We don't have to worry about the ownership in Vegas or Montreal or St. Louis running out of money anytime soon. And, in the early 90s and late 80s, there were teams tottering on the edge of collapse constantly. So, but yeah, Gary Bettman's going to be gone one of these days.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe the next guy doesn't care as much as Gary Bettman does where the money comes from. He's hired by the owners. And this is not the same ownership class that hired Gary Bettman to begin with, which is something I think we don't talk about a lot. When Gary Bettman was brought in to the NHL, he was brought in by an ownership class that wanted to stop spending so much money on players, and were a lot of them in bad financial straits. The guys who bring in Gary Bettman's replacements are going to be amongst the richest men in the world. And it is primarily men.
Mm.
They're all billionaires, multi-billionaires, representative of huge companies like Comcast. They are not going to be as concerned about the source of money.
Just as long as they get more.
As long as they get their cut. And we have not been talking about this. And I think it's a really interesting thing because Gary Bettman's in his late 60s, right?
If not 70s by now.
Yeah, he's not the young man. We are in the twilight. Yeah, he is 71. We're in the twilight of Gary Bettman's NHL, commissioner career. Mm-hmm. There's no two ways around that. Yeah, we don't know. Hold on. There probably does say what his current contract is somewhere in his Wikipedia page.
He signed an extension, what was it, 5 years ago? And I want to say it was for 8 years.
Yeah.
$9 million a pop, something like that.
Yeah, it's a...
Regardless.
Gary Bettman contract extension. So he was extended 5 years quietly during the conclusion of the Kyle Beach investigation. So that would have been 2022. So we've got 3 more years of Gary Bettman. And then, he'll be 74 years old.
Yeah.
So again, the people who are going to be choosing his replacement are people who do not own sports teams entirely for the fun of it. They own them as investment vehicles. They are people who are looking for the bottom line. They're going to be hungry for expansion. And Gary probably won't be the one overseeing all of the next round of expansion. It's possible. It's possible they bring in somebody who just maximizes it and doesn't care if the money comes from, a guy who loves hockey, Like Ryan Smith seems like he loves hockey. Seems like he loves sports and just wants to bring a team to his hometown. And he happens to be a billionaire. But
the perfect recipe.
Yeah. But what if there's someone who would have offered $2 billion for the Coyotes, but he gets his money from Riot?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that next guy's going to care. So,
yeah.
Anyway, that's me bitching about the Saudis for a while.
It was
don't honestly, watch Live Golf. Don't watch Live Golf. If they buy the ATP, stop watching tennis because it's the only way to stop them from, buying these things. Like I don't watch the WWE in Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. Refuse to put those on. It's the only way to show my displeasure.
Amen to that. But yeah, no, and as someone who knows very little about it, like I knew a couple of the sports leagues and whatnot that they were involved in. I'm thankful for you for having that conversation and thankful that you taught me many things, and I hope also taught our listeners many things as well. So thank you for that.
All right. Anything else you want to talk about today, Trevor?
Nope. But it looks like Montreal and Boston are going overtime again.
Oh, of course they are. They're doomed to do this forever.
Yeah. No, I think we're good to roll on out. So
all right.
Hit them with it.
Hey, thanks so much for joining us today with the Neutral Zone Hotel. We were pleased to have you as our guest. If you feel the need to hang out with us, please do so. Instagram, Blue Sky, @Neutral Zone Hotel, all one word. You can find out more information at neutralzonehotel.com, neutralzonehotel.com/Discord. Hit us up. Let's hang out. Let's chat. If you had a great time listening, give us 5 stars on your podcast platform of choice. We want to thank our friend Emily Mowbray, who designed our fantastic logo, and I want to thank the rest of the Neutral Zone Hotel crew for their hard work producing, editing, and making the magic happen. Hey, thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week.